I watched the first Mad Max movie.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, what a weird time.
Yeah, right?
I mean,
not what you expected.
I've
right?
only seen Fury Road, and so
I told you, you're going to be like, how did they get from that to Fury Road?
Yeah.
Man,
No, you're
you
right.
watch the second movie, and it's like wait a minute. Was there like a 1.5 that I missed in there? Like,
yeah, I know. We finished it, and I was like, this was Mad Max, correct? Let's just double check what the disc says. So yeah, weird. And it was like by the last, 20 minutes, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I can all right, I kind of see at least the direction we're heading. But
yeah,
it was really something. I did not know what to expect, but I can tell you that it wasn't that at all.
Welcome to This Endorian Life, a Star Wars podcast from the Radio Meanwhile Network. My name is Steve Rudd.
I'm Nick Gunning, and this week our journey through Star Wars vintage brings us to the
Droids. Today we are discussing Droids issue number 2, The Ultimate Weapon. This issue hit the stands on March 18th, 1986. We were wee boys.
How about right in on continuity? Right? I mean, it's so serialized. It picks right up from the previous.
Yep. I was very
cool.
surprised at that.
I was shocked. This was the most continuity of like any two episodes that we ever. Anyway, that was a pleasant surprise. The issue was written by Dave Manek and illustrated once again by John Romita. Collected by Marvel in the hardcover Star Wars Legends, Omnibus, Ewoks, and Droids. We do have some returning casts this time because Vlix on card and Tig Fromm return. We first met these fellas in the episode The White Witch, and I did not expect to see them again, but here they are.
At least we saw them and not a different villain that we just absolutely hated.
Yeah,
right?
True. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the recurring villain thing coming back. I thought it kind of worked for the comic. I like to see it. Like when Morag popped in for the episode you and Kendra did together.
Yeah. So it just, it worked. I think that was the right thing to do. Whoever thought of that was like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, kind of taking the cues from the show.
Yeah.
Our featured creative this week is Al Williamson. So Al has a long history of working on Star Wars comics from the early Marvel days up through the Dark Horse era. He's worked as a penciler, a cover artist, and an inker, which is what he did for today's issue. Outside of Star Wars, he did some epic work for DC Comics, including a team-up with author Elliot S. Maggin on Superman 400. I love Maggin stuff on Superman. He also wrote a lot of Shazam, which I interviewed Elliot S. Maggin on the All the Books show. We talked about his Shazam run. So cool that Al Williamson here worked alongside Elliot.
That's cool.
Other Superman work that Al Williamson worked on was Superman Swamp Thing, a crossover he did with Alan Moore. And he did an extended run inking for Kurt Swan's Superman issues, several of them. Kurt Swan also kind of a legend, particularly with Superman. So varied career for Al Williamson, who inked this issue that we're talking about today.
Man, he worked with Alan Moore.
I know, that is cool, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Alan Moore is I feel like is more famous now after the Watchmen movie than he was earlier. Like, I always liked that story and the fact that the comic book ends so strangely compared to the movie. But great writer. I always liked those darker. That was why I was a DC fan. I really liked the Batman comics and that they were darker than like the majority of the Marvel comics were just more fun and playful, and DC tended to be more serious.
Yeah, I think that's true. Maybe not in the Silver Age when all of DC comics were just Lois trying to trick Superman into marrying her, but when you move into the 80s, certainly
in the
DC,
80s, 90s, they were pretty dark. Yeah,
and I feel like Marvel tried it with their Marvel Max line with like Punisher titles and stuff, but not as successfully as DC, I don't think. So yeah, I'm with you there.
All right, uber detailed plot of Issue number 2, The Ultimate Weapon. We pick up where we left off in issue number 1, The Destroyer. C-3PO and R2 are en route to get R2 repaired. A tussle between droids starts after 3PO insults the other droids when R2 gets bumped and begins to overload. Nikki, one of the pilots, quickly inserts a shield into R2 that prevents him from overloading. 3PO is relieved and offers the two of them to serve Nikki and Vic until R2 is repaired. Nikki also assures 3PO her father can fix any droid. Vic gives 3PO a made-up task to keep him occupied. Meanwhile, Nikki sprays herself with her new perfume. When the lot gets to their space station, they are surprised to find a strange ship there instead of their father. Nikki goes to investigate and stumbles into Tig Fromm and Vlix interrogating her father. They demand he installs his new weapon onto their ship, but Lon Id assures them it's a laser for droid research, not a weapon. Before Tig hurts her father, Nikki bursts in and is immediately captured. Thinking quickly, she activates a camera so that Vic and the droids are alerted before Tig's men find them. While they hide, they stumble upon the shell of an old Guardian droid. Too bad it's just the shell. The droids and Vic devise a plan to use R2's overload to distract the guards and spring Nikki from the supply closet Tig's men locked her in. Vic and R2 go and execute the plan perfectly until Tig's hover droids capture them. Now Vic, Nikki, and Lon are at the mercy of Tig. That is, until the Guardian droid appears. Tig demands they give him the droid's control disc. Nikki fools Tig by fake-handing Tig her perfume and spraying it into his face. Vic takes the opportunity to command the Guardian droid to get the Fromm gang. Tig's hover droids attack the Guardian droid, but the armor easily repels the blasts. The Guardian droid swats the hover droids out of the air, and Vic quickly incapacitates the Fromm gang with a net. With everyone now safe, the Guardian droid is revealed to be none other than C-3PO, who put a droid shell over his golden chassis. As promised, Lon fixes R2 and, in a rather hilarious twist, has no recollection of the past few events. Roll the credits.
Classic, everybody's laughing, Hanna-Barbera.
I know, yeah.
I was really surprised that it was such a continuation because we see them with even some of these droids as they're aboard this intergalactic droid agency shuttle. We see the shuttle, it's the same shuttle. R2 is malfunctioning and stuff because of the whole overload he had to do with the destroyer in the first issue.
Yep.
So the fact that like he's still, it's kind of like on Star Trek The Next Generation where the next episode, the ship is completely fixed. This was more of a Battlestar Galactica approach where R2-D2 is still kind of reeling from
they're just never fixed.
Adventure. Yeah, which is like, so I thought that was really cool. And I thought when the Fromm, whatever Fromm it is, and Vlix show up, C-3PO recognizes them and is the one who's like, oh, these are like mobsters, you got to be careful. I really liked that, because one thing we've consistently complained about through all of the droids cartoons, at least, was the droids don't really have anything to offer. And I feel like you can't make that argument here.
Yes. Finally, and it's 3PO, right? It's always been 3PO the one to kind of bumble and mistakenly do something where R2 is the one that kind of fixes it or just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Opens a door, right? Like that's always been, 3PO's been like the Swiss Army knife. Now he's down and 3PO has to be the one to do something. So he finally does. The droids are now the hero again. And when I saw the destroyer droid or the Guardian droid, I was like, oh boy, here we go again. The Guardian droid is going to be the one to save the day, not 3PO and R2. And I picked it up pretty quickly that I was like, wait a minute, this is
when they say, oh, it's too bad it's just a shell. I was like, I know who's getting in that shell.
Yeah. True. It's true. This one though it almost felt like it should have been longer. I don't know. The whole perfume thing bugged me a little bit where it was like, she seemed like she was like, "Oh, I bought this perfume because like where we're going, there's going to be a boy." And then she's like running off the ship. Where's my dad? And I was just like, why'd she put the perfume on? If like,
I know.
And so I thought, oh, I wonder if there was like a whole portion of the story where there was like a boy or something that was going to be involved in it somehow.
Yeah.
They did come full circle with it, with the perfume was then used to distract Tig from, like she sprayed it in his face. What did that have to do with it, you know?
That stood out to me too, because it really did feel like we were setting something up, and we didn't need the earlier scene for her to pull out something to spray and you know, to distract the guy later. I thought, like, is it going to be a thing where like they can't find her, but they can follow the perfume,
smell her.
Or
that would have been a good
I
thing
thought
too.
it was going to be something like that where the perfume came into play, but like it really doesn't. I mean, you're right that we get a callback to it, but it did feel like it was setting up something that didn't pay off. So yeah, I was a little confused by that too. But
she did also pull it out of her pocketless flight suit.
That's true. That's true. Well, it's space. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It it was also just with pulling out some familiar characters. It wasn't like it was the whole From, like Size From wasn't there. You know, it was just like some of the lower flunkies, and I thought that was good too because it's such a small little story that to try to crowd too much in.
Also, if you caught it, the reference to like, oh, if I get this, my dad's gonna, my dad's gonna be like totally cool with it. And Vlix is like, yeah, but you think this is gonna make up for all those other times you messed up. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. What a perfect callback to like all the times Tig From has failed. Yeah. So that was another like, oh, that was a great little bit there that really connected this story to the show where we see Tig mess up all the time. So perfect. I mean, this is like this to me, this was great because it felt like an episode of Droids just on paper. Very short. It felt very short.
It felt like what I wanted the Droids episodes to be like, but on paper.
Yeah.
I agree with you that it felt short, and I felt the same way about the first issue, that it really sped by. But again, I mean, I can't knock it for that because it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it doesn't feel abrupt. It just feels short. Like it doesn't feel like oh, it's over already. It's just like oh, the whole thing was brief. But I thought the pacing feels right for a short, quick, in and out kind of story, and they didn't pack too much in, but they gave us enough action and good use of the characters. I think it was pretty good overall. Sticking with good, what is your Ichiwawa moment?
Oh, it has to be the addition of Tig and Vlix. I think to me it was recognizable characters. They didn't make up a new villain that looks weird. It's okay to bring back a reoccurring villain. And there's like something about that, like you remember when we were reading the Ewoks comics where they would like create this villain that just does not fit in that universe. Like we had the green space guys, and then we had like the barbarian like axe throwing guys that somehow got there in a spaceship, but they don't have laser weapons. They use spears and axes. So it's just like it made the issue feel special because I was like, yes, they're a Droids villain, and I'm reading a Droids comic. I feel like I'm in the Droids world now. And everything meshes. That's why I loved it. I was like, oh, yes, Tig, Vlix, this is perfect. It's going to be hilarious. It's going to be good, and it works for me. It worked. I love that. What about you? What was your Ichiwawa moment?
It's kind of on a similar line. It's the continuity overall because I really liked that they used the damage that R2 got in the previous one as sort of the mechanism to move this story along. I thought that was really clever and totally unexpected after all the Ewoks comics that we've read so far in the shows, outside of the arcs in the Droids cartoons. It was just kind of an unusual thing for the comics. So I really liked, the inclusion of the villains that we knew and tying into the first story so much. It just made it feel like I had some nice serialized things, but if you just read one of these by itself, they would also totally work. You don't have to know who the Froms are. You don't have to know that R2 was damaged in the previous issue. Like that's fine. So I feel like that. I feel like that worked really well. Okavark, what's your Okavark moment?
Well, first, did it feel like this issue almost made the first one feel a little bit better? I got that when I was reading it. I was like, oh man, like I feel like I kind of knocked the first episode, maybe. No, I feel like I did like it for the most part, but it made me like when I finished it, I was like, oh yeah, like I felt like the first one had a little bit more meaningful closure because of this one. So I think that I think linking them together was a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that actually rolls into my oak of arc. So let me tell you that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
We're on this topic. The thing that stood out to me was that these are pretty much the exact same story, like beat for beat. It's the same story. You have, the droids, this kid, the kid needs help. They go to this planet. They find this old droid thing that supposedly doesn't work anymore. They use the droid thing to defeat the villain. And like the kids are happy and the droids get back on the ship. It's the exact same plot. But I think this is a better version of that first plot. So, I see what you're saying, but I sort of feel like in a way it's like the first issue almost feels like a rough draft for this story. Yeah. So I'm kind of like...
It doesn't repeat it. It rhymes.
Yeah.
And this is the rhyme. We're like, oh, yeah, there we go. There's the rhyme. Okay. Yeah.
So, for what it was, that's not a huge knock. But the first time it was R2, using the destroyer and activating it. And this time it was C-3PO using the Guardian. And slight differences, but it's still beat for beat. You're really kind of telling the same story. So that stood out to me. This is not an oak of arc, but worth mentioning. R2-D2's coloring is so weird.
Speaking of that is my oak.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. R2. So it's not only R2, it's Tig and Vlix are also blue, and clearly in the show they're green.
Oh, you're right.
And so I mean, that's, is there just not blue in here? And I looked and I'm just like, no, there's blue. There's tons of blue.
Their jumpsuits are blue and stuff.
Yeah, their jumpsuits are blue, and then their bodies are blue, but clearly in the show, they're like that pea green.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, dang, man, what the heck? And then, R2, it's just like, and I thought, well, maybe I should just like flip through and see if like 3PO shows up as orange. Like, they always seem to get 3PO right.
Yeah.
And there is another issue where R2 is totally red, and on the same page, he's yellow. Yeah. So it's just like...
Well, the first issue, the R2 design is very simple. It doesn't have the complexity of like the live action version, but it's, you've got the blues and the light blues and the red. There's not a drop of blue on him. He's just silver with red, yellow, and gold. So very odd.
On the first page, he has blue and red. And then on the very next page, he's blue and red and yellow.
Oh, you're right. On
the third page, he's just red and yellow.
Yeah, so he does have a little blue.
Evolves into, and then page 33 in our book, he's literally white and pink, like they forgot to color him in.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder if it's...
I don't hate it.
I thought maybe it had to do with his overloading. Like, he's damaged. Yeah, I wondered... showing up as red and yellow. But
I wondered that too, but I don't think so.
Still damaged. He's still that color in like the next issue. So there just must have been like a... I don't know. Is there like do they run out of colors and they're just like, well, this is the color we're making it, so because that's what we got.
Yeah, I might think that's it if there wasn't so much of the right blue. And it's like on the same pages there's blue. Like the like you said, the Froms are blue. I don't know. I don't hate the design. It kind of works, but it's just odd that all of a sudden R2 is just a completely different color palette.
Just looks like R4. He's like R4.
Yeah.
Or no, R4 is a different shape.
Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense to be your Oak of Arc moment. I know
that's my Oak of Arc. Well, this is your main character. It's called Droids. Right. Color him in right. Like, I don't know. It's like...
Yeah, I get it. How many Yub Nubs for this one?
Man, this was like a solid 4.5 for me. I really enjoyed it. I wish it were a little bit longer. And maybe it wasn't shorter, and that's how it just moved. I think you were right that like this was what Droids should be, because 3PO and R2 or 3PO finally was a hero of it, rather than it just being R2 opening doors for the real heroes and 3PO kind of bumbling and somehow messing things up, but in a good way. Yeah. Falling into the room at the right time, or tipping over, or
he actually was genuinely like good and helpful, which we haven't seen a lot of. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, what about you? What's your rating?
I don't know. We're running a lot of road on these Droids comics because there's not very many of them, and I haven't been a huge fan. I think in terms of the Droid stuff that I've seen, I can give it a 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think so. A 5, like, for Droids. You know what I mean?
For Droids, it was enjoyable.
Like
yeah,
when you're rating a Christmas movie or something, you give it a little bit higher because it's a Christmas movie. That's what I mean. Like, for the Droids' journey thus far, I feel like this is the best time I've had, and I really don't have complaints. Other than it's kind of it. You can see it's kind of a retread, but like, it's perfected. It's like they made it better, so it's not just an even wash.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the sequels.
Yeah, for the purpose of rating Droids, I'm at a 5.
Okay. Yeah,
I feel like I'm damning it with faint praise.
This is peak Droids, right?
I'm like, since they're all hot garbage, this is the coolest piece of garbage.
This is the coolest of hot garbage.
Yeah.
The most tolerable garbage.
Yeah,
right. This one was good as far as Droids go. I tend to like that kids are involved because then I'm hoping that R2 and 3PO are the ones that do the things because the kids can't. When they're with adults, it's literally they're just there while the adults are doing things. And so, there's got to be kids. They got to be paired with kids, and you got to make them the ones that do it right. And if there's a point where 3PO or R2 bumble something, there's got to be redemption from that bumble. And that's why, like, the previous issue, number 1, C-3PO is completely worthless.
True.
Throughout the whole issue. Yeah. And then finally this one, so it's just like, that's why it does work perfectly because it's like, okay, that was his bumble, issue 1, and his redemption is in issue 2. And R2 and 3PO kind of flip as far as their roles, right? R2 was the savior, now 3, like you said, and it's just like, this is the best Droids thing I think we've seen so far.
I'm right there with you. Next time, we're going to be back to Endor, and I feel like it's been a while since we've covered the Ewoks. So always excited to get back for Ewoks number 9, The Underwater Kingdom. And we really haven't dealt with underwater for the Ewoks yet. So that's kind of a new thing.
Are you going to bet that there is nothing actually underwater? Because, I mean, that's the joke, right?
Worried about that.
The ultimate weapon, we didn't really...
I guess R2 was the ultimate weapon? Or C-3PO was the ultimate weapon?
But yeah, I'm happy to get back to Endor. It's like going back home.
It is.
Be nice.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, well then I will see you on the Forest Moon.
All right, I'll see you then. This Endorian Life...
Sorry.
This Endorian Life was brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include 90s Music Got Me Like, previously on X-Men, and 9021 Here We Go! Share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook or X at Endorian Life. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show wherever you get your podcasts. Each one! Shabba-dabba-beep-a-doo.